Maybe I should start adding deadlines to these again, I was much more productive with them. Anyway, if you're watching this, then at least version 0.2.3 of my game is up, and the first thing that we have to cover is that it has a new name. I had been calling it Lo-Fi Sky when the entire game wasn't going to be underwater, but as plans changed, so did the title. Now it's called Benthic Zone. I'd like to thank Dances with Wolves for helping me come up with a new title. Hopefully it'll get more people to download it at the link in the description. Hint hint. Aside from struggling to think of a title, the biggest thing that kept me from posting an update was working on this Mac OS 8 inspired menu system. In short, I would think about learning how to use Godot's UI controls, be intimidated by the prospect, then remake the water for the 5th time. On the bright side, doesn't the water look nice? It's worth noting that you can't see the water below about a couple dozen meters anyway. If any other aspiring game devs want to learn how to use them, I found that the most important nodes were 9-patch-rect, the VBox container, and the HBox container. I'll give a special mention to the margin container. The 9-patch-rect takes a texture and makes it so that you can stretch it out without distorting the border, something I wrote a convoluted shader for before learning about the node. You'll notice these all throughout the design, particularly for this texture. It creates that sunken or raised effect that used to be quite common in operating systems during the late 90s and early 2000s. The VBox container and HBox container are simple yet quite useful when layered. Basically, all the children of the node will be arranged in either columns or rows. This allows for a lot of flexibility whenever you begin adding box containers as children of other box containers. The margin container simply creates an area for its children that is smaller than itself. Well, that takes care of the aesthetics of the interface, but what about the functionality? Time for a word that sounds a lot more intimidating than it is. Polymorphism. If you studied programming in school, you may remember this as the thing that schools somehow do a terrible job of teaching. Basically, we have classes with various methods and then subclasses that override them. This is a tidy way of reusing code and ensuring consistency across related objects. In this case, what we've done is create a class for a desktop icon. All it does is hold textures to show when an icon is idle, hovered, or clicked. It also has a blank function for what to do when the icon is clicked. If we were to place our desktop icon into the world, it would change textures as appropriate, but nothing else would happen whenever it's clicked. What we can do instead is create classes for other buttons. For example, the exit button class maintains the texture swapping feature, but adds into its click function a command to close the game. Similarly, the options button class instantiates a pre-made scene that allows the player to change the resolution, toggle VSync, and toggle full screen. Using polymorphism this way means that if I want to make any changes to how the texture swapping works, I only have to do it one place rather than many. For a little bonus, you may notice that the buttons here also switch textures upon mouse interaction. The advanced lesson with polymorphism is that you can give it layers. In this case, we have a class that extends desktop icon called settings icon. An icon here needs a set of textures for whenever it is active and when it isn't. So, this script has added functionality to switch between two sets. If you start looking into Godot, you'll notice that all the built-in nodes work similarly. The final big tip I learned over this period is to use groups. I'm positive there is a tidier way to do this than I currently am, but what I've started doing is adding nodes to groups, then referencing them in other scripts by pulling the tree for the first node in that group. It feels slightly sloppy since I'm using multiple arrays with one item each, but it's much cleaner than how I used to do it, which was to either type the whole path from the node or recursively search the entire tree. That wraps up the major updates for this build. If you're curious as to the entire list, I've started a changelog that can be found packaged with the game over on itch. Check it out and let me know what you think. My next big things will be to add functionality to the other buttons, add some sound, and add some objects for you to look at in the ocean. If there's anything else from the game that you want to be explained, or if you think I just didn't explain well enough, let me know in the comments.